Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez. My guest today is Josh Talbert. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Henry. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Just to put it out there, Josh and I have known each other now for about a year. I have the privilege of being his coach, his business coach through the Maui Mastermind program. So it's my pleasure to have him here because I have a firsthand insight into what he's built with his current business venture. But Josh is with me today to share his lessons learned from launching and growing multiple ventures, including his latest, which is an AI-powered platform. The company is called MySherpas.ai. And we're going to dive into the origins of his entrepreneurial journey. Is very interesting, as well as the challenges that he has faced and overcome in starting multiple startups, including MySherpas.ai. You can find all of the How of Business resources, including the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. That's also where you can learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs. And I also invite you to consider supporting the show and joining our business community on Patreon, and subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. So let me tell you a little bit more about Josh Talbert and we'll get into the conversation. Josh Talbert is a seasoned entrepreneur and a tech innovator with a passion for building practical solutions for business productivity. He's currently the co-founder and CEO of MySherpas.ai. That's the website as well. And MySherpas is an AI-powered software platform. It's pioneering a new category in lending technology, enhancing the capabilities of lending teams like commercial loans and business loans and other types of loans. It's making it easy for those organizations to collaborate, to manage data securely, and to keep everybody aligned from application to loan payoff. He's got a background as an electrical engineer. That's how he started his career. And then from there, went on to launch and scale multiple startups. So Josh brings a deep experience in product development, growth strategy, and real-world application of emerging technologies like AI. And he's leveraged that over his career and his experience with startups internationally and domestically. Josh lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. So once again, Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So you went to school for engineering, correct?
I did, yeah, right here in Salt Lake. I'm actually looking out at the campus out of my office right now, University of Utah.
University of Utah, got it. That's in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, just right up on the mountain here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. And did you grow up in that area?
Yeah, I grew up in the area. It was always looked to as one of the premier schools. At the time I went, it was a top 20 engineering school, especially for electrical engineering, computer science. And so it was definitely on the list to go to, and I was glad I got in.
And what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up back then? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a business owner. I think from an early age, my father grew up on a rural farm here in Utah. I always had a kind of can-do, independent attitude. And my stepfather at an early age had owned businesses. He worked for a defense contractor and then formed a few businesses that I was a part of and, helping out as a young guy, young kid. And so I always saw business ownership as something I wanted to do from a young age.
Mm-hmm. It's often, I'll mention this often on the show, that a lot of times one of the challenges that the baby boomers in particular have with selling their businesses is their children don't want them. And in part, it's because they've done the study on this, that all the kids heard, young adults or adults have heard, it was all of the headaches, the problems, the lawsuits, the employee that didn't show up, all of those kind of headaches. Do you think, though, it was your stepdad? Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you think that you saw both sides of it, or what are your memories of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with my father, he ended up becoming a mechanic for one of the large car dealerships here. So I saw, him working for somebody and what that entailed. And then my stepfather, he had his business. Yes, the stresses were there, but I saw the benefits of owning the business and the control that it afforded you. It kind of you could affect change, very quickly versus working for somebody else. And that was always attractive to me.
Yeah, it almost sounds a bit like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad story. I don't know if you've read that book or not, right? But
great book.
You were able to contrast those two things, right? Here were two influential people that you cared about, and you saw kind of what they were able to achieve in that realm of success, right? That has nothing to do with personal success, but the limitations that your dad had versus the opportunities perhaps that your stepdad had. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely saw that.
And then you mentioned that word control. I mean, for me, that was such a big part of why I wanted to become a business owner is I just couldn't stand from very early on, even though I had a long corporate career, somebody else dictating what my limits were, what my decision-making abilities were, understandably, and controlling what I did and when I did it. I just always rebelled against that.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Our previous company we sold was in the med tech space. We sold it to a Fortune 50, company, global med tech company, and that was probably the biggest challenge of all the positive things I learned from that experience. The one that always weighed on me daily was not being able to affect something and see it actually happen by making those strategic changes or those adaptations, as you saw what the market and your customers were doing. That probably was the most frustrating part. And moving into owning a business, you at least feel like you're affecting those things,
That's
which
right.
makes
Or
it
you have an opportunity to, right?
exactly.
And I think that's what we want so much as those of us who are built to be entrepreneurs or develop that passion to be business owners and entrepreneurs is we want to make those decisions. We want to be the ones that make those decisions where we go. But nonetheless, you went to engineering school. What was the idea? Did you think you would venture into startups related to engineering, or was this your plan B in case it didn't work out? What was the thought? Why go to engineering school?
Yeah, I think always was had a technical mindset. I was always like the go-to IT person in the neighborhood. I was helping out a lot of other business owners with their computers and what have you. So kind of gravitated towards engineering and software. I think for me, I saw it as a tool to achieve something bigger in life, and I think electrical engineering is one of the hardest engineering degrees to get. And I felt like that would really tee me up of how to think and approach problems in a meaningful way. Because oftentimes in electrical engineering software, things that the problems are so big that unless you understand how to break those things into small chunks and solve them, it can be very daunting. I think it's actually also applies to business ownership as well, because the overwhelming of starting a business and how do I do that? You have to really figure out how to break those things into small chunks and tackle those things on a daily basis and try to just get a little bit better every day, because you're not going to solve everything today.
Yeah,
Just doesn't
no,
happen.
no, I think that's so spot on in my experience as well. That ability, you learned how to, not only did you learn how to learn, but you learned how to problem solve, high level problem resolution. And you make a great point, which is what I see paralyzes a lot of people, particularly as they're looking to start a business. It's all of a sudden there's this mountain of things that has to be done and decisions that have to be made. And there's no guarantees on which way to go, this way or that way. So that ability to break it down into scalable parts or steps has served you well, no doubt, as you've had successful multiple startups, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been a key to that success for sure.
And then, of course, the technology didn't hurt. You had a predisposition for it, an ability for it, and now you've applied that engineering background to, in this case, the software world. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long were you working as an engineer for somebody else?
So I worked for about 2 years, I would say. I was in the Dallas, Texas area,
Okay.
working for a defense contractor there, and then translated over to a med tech company in San Francisco Bay Area. Did that for a couple years. So about, I guess, 4 years total out of college with my master's, and then moved back to Salt Lake, and that's when we founded our first med tech company right here in Salt Lake City.
This is Henry Lopez, briefly pausing this episode to invite you to schedule a free coaching consultation with me. I welcome the opportunity to chat with you about your business plans and offer the guidance and accountability that we all need to achieve success. As an experienced small business owner myself, I understand the challenges you're experiencing, and often it's about helping you ask the right questions to help you make progress towards achieving your goals. Whether it's getting started with your first business or growing and maybe exiting your existing small business, I can help you get there. To find out more about my business coaching services and to schedule your free coaching consultation, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. Take that next step today towards finally realizing your business ownership dreams. I look forward to speaking with you soon. And what led to that? What led to you leaving that career, which I'm sure you were making good money, benefits, the whole bit,
Yeah.
to taking the risk of starting something?
Well, it happened, you don't always choose who you work with, but I ended up being on a team of 5 or 6 individuals that like from the time we met each other, there was this spark of collaboration and culture. And I think after about 6 months of working with each other, I organized a Christmas dinner for everybody, their wives, everything, and said, "Hey, I really enjoy spending time working with you guys. I want to do something bigger than work for a corporation." And 3 of the 6 people raised their hand and said, "Yeah, we'd love to do something with you." And
Wow.
we all kind of moved in together and to save money because we're living in San Jose.
Were you
And
all single at the time?
one was married,
Mhm.
and his wife actually agreed to move in with us,
Is
and they
that,
had a
but no
young
kids? No,
child.
nobody had any kids?
They had a young child actually,
They had a
like
young
a
age.
like
Oh,
a year.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
It was quite the I forget what we called it. I think the commune, I think is what we called it. But yeah, it was great. We thought about ideas. We were literally working in a garage, and when we thought we had something, we decided all quit roughly at the same time
Wow.
and formed the business. And
How did you fund that first business? Where did the money come from mostly?
typical the 3 F's they call them: the friends, families, and fools. So
Hmm.
went to our families, raised a little bit of capital. I think about 400,000 or 500,000 was the initial raise. Built a prototype and started to get some traction with some larger B2B customers as well as international customers. That kind of led to further funding and growing the business.
And then what happened with that business?
So we grew that there was 4 originally. I think we got up to about 20 people. We exited in 2015. We were on track to do about 7 million in revenue that year, and it was one of the top medical healthcare companies in the world who acquired us, which was
Wow.
great. Yeah.
So fantastic success, early success, first venture through a lot of hard work, I'm sure, but that's fantastic that you had that early success.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to go off on a tangent here on working with others, working with partners, because you're doing that now in your venture as well.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person that mostly prefers working in partnership, but I have a lot of strong opinions about what makes partnerships work, right?
Yeah.
Do you prefer working with a partner or in a team?
I do. It's kind of an enigma with me. So I think I'm strongly independent, but in business, I do enjoy the partnership. And I think, to your point, you have to find the right partner because in many cases it's like a marriage. Like you have to have a good cultural fit. You don't have to always think the same way, but you have to have
Right.
good communication skills, ways to express yourself, way to resolve things that happen, during the course of that partnership. Those are all, really important for me. So I always look for someone that can counter me. I tend to be more aggressive, and so having someone to dampen my aggressiveness, I think, has
Mhm.
always been great. I think, like, here, my co-founder is Don Wicker, and he was my co-founder at Olive Medical, the prior company. And he and I have found that really good balance. That if you can achieve that, I think you can do a lot more than when
Agreed.
you're on your own.
Yeah, agreed perfectly. I align perfectly with what you're saying there. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So what led you to My Sherpas? What was the problem and how did you come to identify this opportunity or problem that exists? First of all, let's start with just give me a high level explanation of what it is that you provide through My Sherpas.
Yeah, so we are really solving a 40 plus year problem in the commercial business lending space, which is the communication and collaboration that needs to happen between the lending team and the borrowing team. That really is the fundamental problem of, hey, I need this stuff from you. You need to give me this stuff so I can analyze to see if we even have, something that I can help you with.
Right.
We do that in a very straightforward, intuitive way that's unique in the space. And we're starting to see, significant traction as that message is getting out in the marketplace. It's been quite powerful to just see how people see that problem, have tried other solutions, and see how we really solve that. And more importantly, they can bring their whole team on board and go live with our system typically in less than 30 days, which is
Yeah.
unheard of in the
Incredible,
space.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more and more. I mean, when I think back to my career in ERPs and how long, sometimes multi-year implementations of large ERP systems, and that was always what led to a lot of the failures of implementations, right? Some famous failures of ERP systems back in the 90s. So, the point that you highlighted, the problem, I think all of us listening probably, if we've ever gotten a loan, like I think I shared with you early on when we started working together, my last home purchase experience, which was 5 years ago, and how convoluted that was and what a painful process that is. So, and that was me as an individual borrower for my home. This applies, of course, to individuals like myself, business borrowers, larger of all scales, but it's still that same problem. The lender needs from me certain documents, and then it always seems, from my perspective as a borrower, like it's, oh, now we need this, oh, now we need this, oh, we didn't get this, oh, and so there's all of this latency and pain through the process. Why hasn't this been fixed? What do you think has been the challenge to fixing this problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. My perspective on this and our perspective at MySherpas.ai is really that the technological relationship between the lending team and the borrower or the business is asymmetric, meaning that they have some advanced software solution that they're working in 90% of their day, and a borrower or business owner doesn't know that solution, doesn't want to learn a new technology.
Right.
What they're familiar with is email and texting. And
Right.
even though there's, we all know the security and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, getting a loan may not be the core objective of the business owner. So this is something they're doing as they're running their business. And so you got to meet them in the technology space where they're at. Meaning, if they're a texter, you got to be able to take stuff via text. If they're an email person, do that. If they're a really advanced technical person that loves getting on and knowing exactly what they're delivering, you need to solve that problem too. So you have this generational, you have this technology level piece that you're trying to solve, and it's really hard. I think that's why no one has solved it. I think
Right. So we have that disconnect between the borrower and the lender and the technologies that we're either comfortable or want to use. The borrower wants me to use their portal, their platform. I'm like, what the heck is that? Can't I just email you? So there's that piece of it. There's also the breakdown in communication, right? Because that, again, I may have to read through an email thread or make sure you communicated properly. So there's that breakdown as well, right?
Yes.
And then there is, within the lending organization, all of the different parts that I don't see as a borrower, right? I'm dealing with the rep or whoever it is that I'm dealing with, but I don't see all the other parts of the organizations that are involved in this lending process, right?
That's right. Yeah, there could be a whole group of people that you never talk with that are working on your deal, but you're unaware of that happening, which can also be a frustration.
So that collaboration is where historically it has been broken, in part, I suspect, because of disparate systems.
Disparate systems and lack of, if you're a first time borrower or haven't done it often enough, you're kind of learning that process. And even though everyone's lending money, they all have their unique way of doing it, and that can also lead to inefficiencies in getting to a decision.
So going back to what led you to uncover this need, because you had not been in the lending industry before, right? So how did you come upon this need and gap in the market?
Yeah. So like many folks who sell their business, I rolled a lot of proceeds into real estate. So
I see.
I became a borrower. I started to borrow money commercially for multifamily, for commercial retail. I put together a few, private equity deals where I had some general partners involved in the equation. And it just became exponentially more painful.
I see.
As you saw those types of deals go down. And coincidentally, when I went to talk about forming this business, Don Wickern, my former partner at the Olive Medical, he was buying a burger franchise, Culver's, out of Wisconsin, because he's a Wisconsin guy.
Does he still own the Culver's?
I actually sold that. He sold it, I think, last year.
That's one of our favorite fast food burger joints. Yeah, good business. Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
When I get you out here to Utah, we'll go.
Yeah. I love Culver's. We have one. We have one here in Florida now, so we go often. Wow. Yeah.
He was going through getting an SBA 7A loan to acquire that, and I called him up. He said, "Yes, let's solve this problem."
This is a broken process. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And of course, you were dealing probably with multiple lenders. He was dealing with another. So you saw that this is persistent. It seems like anybody I work with, this is broken.
Oh, absolutely. And we're talking to, banks, credit unions, private lenders across the country. And yes, technology is a tool, but they struggle fundamentally with this problem across the board, regardless of what solution they're using. That's why, we call it a new category, is because there's what they're doing, but I think the problem is what we've been discussing here, and it's common as you talk to folks that work on these types of deals.
Right. The the end benefit to both the lender and the buyer, I can probably surmise, but what is it? What there's benefits to both sides here. How do you summarize it?
The end benefit is they are all aligned and aware of what has been delivered, what still may need to be delivered to get to that decision. Are we going to be able to fund you, not fund you? And what's remaining to get that deal closed and off to the races. That's the real benefit.
And I got to think at the end of the day, it's also about throughput, to put it crudely. In other words, the lending organization wants to process loans as efficiently and successfully as possible. Me as a buyer, I want this process to go as quickly and efficiently with the end result I want as possible. And so that's the end game as well, right? Is to make this transaction as smooth, as seamless, and as fast as possible. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to add on to that as well is enhancing your already highly capable lending team members. If you have, John, who's a great loan officer, and Bill, who's a great loan processor, you enhance their ability to do more with less by leveraging the technology built, for, what they need to be effective.
Yeah, it's a classic example. We talk about it certainly a lot here recently as it relates to AI, but this is a perfect example where what you're doing is, for these individuals, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. They're now enabled to do more, better, more efficiently, and serve their clients better.
Absolutely.
All right. So going back, you identify this because you were at one end of it and you saw the problem. What do you do then? What did you do next? And what do you typically do next? Okay, so we've got a problem here. Don's on board. What did you do next? Did you put together a business plan, or what was your next step in developing what ended up becoming MySherpas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we did is I pulled in Don and a couple other key individuals that had a lot of experience in commercial banks and lending experience, pulled in some technology folks as well. And we did a big brainstorming session. I think it was a half a day or a day long, and kind of laid out the problem as we saw it, got validation from those that were in the industry that said, yeah, this is a real problem. If you solve it, it would be valuable. And kind of laid out what our plan would be to build a product that would solve, that problem. Once we saw that it was actually, we could do something, then we decided to, okay, let's form the business. Let's raise a little bit of capital and start to explore, what this would actually look like if we were to realize this product.
And you, I know this, but just to validate, you took an MVP approach. In other words, you defined the scope of what we're going to initially take to market to validate. Is that correct?
We did, yeah, just a basic MVP, and then started to show that to some of these industry folks that we met with early on. And they said, yeah, this is something, this is interesting, this is different. We'd love to see this, come to market.
Yeah. And then you touched on funding. How did you fund this business, at least the initial stages?
Yeah, so we used a common instrument in startups called a safe note, a simple agreement for equity. And we opened up a note. We as founders contributed a lot to that note, but we also had some folks I'd worked with in the past that had seen success in other startups that put in a little bit of capital, parlayed their money into another bet with me, which I appreciated. And that gave us the runway to start to form the business.
Mm-hmm. So let's touch on that for a second, because a lot of people, obviously, that might be their first venture. That's often is the bottleneck, is getting that funding, getting that investment. Mm-hmm. You were able to leverage that reputation, go back to those people who had trusted you, and you showed them what you could do. But what advice do you give to someone who's maybe doing this for the first time on seeking investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for us, and I'm thinking back to all of medical when we didn't have a network really to pull from, there's oftentimes events you can go to get your idea out, to see what kind of legs it has in terms of raising funding. So we did a lot of that in the early days of Olive. So did some presentations for some angel investor groups. We did some like speed dating competitions where you had to really get your message down into 2 or 3 minutes, which was really effective in trying to help you understand what you were doing. And that led to a network of people, and just, being open to connect and keep connecting to, hey, go talk to this guy, go talk to this woman. She might be able to help you out. And through that kind of conversation, you start to, capital starts to trickle in, and it's like getting your first job. It's always hard to get that first job, but once you get a little bit of validation, you can parlay that into getting additional investment. And
I got to imagine it's also going through a lot of no's, a lot of rejection, and being persistent and continuing forward. Is that true?
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you hear no a lot more often than say yes, especially in the early days. So you just got to be don't sweat it. Don't take it too emotionally. Just keep moving. If you believe in your idea and what you're doing, it will come. It just does take some time.
Yeah. It's an interesting point there that I'd like to get your thoughts on, though. Just call it a tangent for a second, Josh, because there's always this, we learned that from people like you and other people who have done ventures successfully, that you've got to be dogged. Like nobody can deter you from this idea you have, even if they tell you it's a terrible idea and it won't make any money. I think we have to balance that, though, with the reality of taking input. I mean, certainly we do that with our MVP. How have you now multiple ventures? How do you balance that people are telling people you trust or value are saying this is not going to work and decided to ignore that and move forward? Or when do you decide to take that and adjust? You understand what I'm asking? Because
Yeah,
it's such a tough thing, right?
it is tough, and I always go to the market and the customer you're ultimately selling the product to. They're the ones that really should guide your adjusting, because your initial idea might get part of it, but it might
Right.
not get enough for someone to buy it from you, right? To separate themselves from their hard-earned money. So I tend to lean on being very open to trying to be as candid with the market as you can and what you're trying to do, to see if there's really value there, and adjusting your thinking and your idea. I think that's the key. You can't be rigid and say, here's my checklist of how things are going to happen. It hasn't happened that way for me in my experience. I think what we've done and the partners I've worked with is being willing to adjust and being able to throw out the idea that you may have thought would have worked, and listen to the market. And that's the art, I think, of being successful when you're building a product, of course, or service that someone else is going to get from you, is what do they really want? What do they really need? What are you solving for them? And is there value if you solve that for them? And that's what you're always trying to discover. Even if you have something successful, to stay relevant, you have to find those things.
Yeah, well said. I think that we're trying to balance as entrepreneurs that determination that we've got an idea here, but it not becoming arrogance that keeps us from listening to what the market is telling us. And then I also think it speaks to the importance of getting to that MVP as quickly as possible to, in fact, validate, is this what this audience wants? Is this what this particular customer wants? Yeah.
Yeah. Often, folks we're talking with, that's all the market wants. They want to have a voice in the conversation and see that their voice is heard and something is adapted or changed. I think software affords you that opportunity, because
Mhm.
it is a canvas that you can adjust. And so you just have to be able to listen and interpret that, to see what's best for what you're working on.
All right. So one other question here on the startup. From that time when you and Don said, yep, this is something we should run with, to launching MVP one, more or less how long was that time frame?
I think MVP was ready in around 6 months or so.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, yeah, that was nice. And we got some early adopters. And early adopters are a blessing and a curse, I would say, because they see all the warts as you're building something and
Sure.
creating this new solution. So they may not stay with you through all that, but they're a key part of the process. And you have to be
Absolutely.
willing to say, hey, we might lose two or three of these guys because they're going to see all the bad stuff that happens as
Right,
we're
right.
creating this thing. But again, being tied to your customer as closely as you can is key to success, in my opinion.
Yeah. And thank goodness again for those organizations that continue to see, all right, I see where this is, I see where it is now, plenty of functionality, but where it's going, and an opportunity, as you mentioned, to continue to influence that, right?
Yeah,
Because
100%.
that's what I think you guys have done very well, in my observation, is to continue, like you said, to listen to those customers. And because now software development allows us so much more to be so much more nimble, I think that it allows you to respond as it makes sense without getting pulled too much in a tangent of what one individual wants, but to better serve that niche market that you're targeting, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Any other thoughts, if you think back to, I mean, maybe even with My Sherpa, which is fresher, what was something that was a learning experience, or something that you would share with someone who's going to go through it for their first time, as something to look for that's a challenge that maybe you didn't expect going into it?
Yeah, I think in any startup business, I think, especially with the hype of the media around startups, and you're seeing it with AI and these like minting billionaires in some cases, I think it's easy to get caught up that this idea is enough to be successful, even if you have the greatest idea, even if there's a patent around it or something like that. I think the challenge in starting something is understanding that it's really about you're going to be living this on a day to day, and you're going to have to create it. And there's a boring part of a startup that probably a lot of people don't talk about. And it's the idea though that keeps you motivated every day to keep working on this thing to create the value that you're looking for. That was true in all of that's true here, is that you just got to get up every day and see what you're, work on what you're building and have the faith that it will turn into something valuable. And oftentimes it could be, people say overnight success, but you find out they were in business for 10 years,
Exactly.
so, and no one talks about that part. And I think that's the part that you just got to get in that, we talked about mindset, before we started this. I think getting yourself in the right mindset and making sure that idea will carry you, will carry the team you're working with, will carry your investors if you decide to take on investors, through to when you see, that success in the marketplace.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think the other challenge that exists there, of course, especially because you were, inventing a new category, like you said here, is from a sales and marketing perspective. That's a hard battle, right? This is not something necessarily people have bought systems similar to this, but this is if it is a new solution, you got to get people to buy in, and you got to evangelize to a certain extent from a sales perspective. So tell me about that. And that's, by the way, one of the things I've admired about you as I've had the opportunity to work with you is your willingness to be open, as we talked about a moment ago, to changing how you go about it. You're not set in, well, this is the way I've done it before, and so by golly, it's going to work again. You're very open-minded to what do I need to do now, because it's ever changing. But talk to us those early challenges that you've had from a sales and marketing perspective, and what did you learn there?
Yeah. That's, this space is quite crowded with technology. It's nothing new.
Mm,
They're aware of it. I think
right.
COVID accelerated the need for tech in the banking and lending industry. So for us, it's really cutting through all of that noise. I think we tried the traditional technology route, which is, demo, and then hopefully the demo's so exciting that they want to buy from you. And that's just not the way that our market works. It's such a relationship driven market first,
Mhm.
relationship first. And so we've created, or created a framework by which to leverage the relationship building first, find out how they use tech, where they use it, why they use it, and then see if we can add value, from that point, once we understand those things. And that's led to, people don't always buy our stuff, but we create great relationships and they look to us as one of those thought leaders. And I think that's also a win for us, even if they don't buy. And I think that's something that we're ever adapting as we get more experience with all these, wonderful firms we work with. But out of the gate, to your point, we had a completely different go-to-market strategy that we had to change as we kind of listened and saw, how the market
Yeah, that's such
responded
a
and
perfect example. And I think that that's one of the things that kills certain businesses is, again, the arrogance of thinking, no, this has worked before. We're gonna stick to this, do or die. And then you run out of money, right?
Yep.
To put it crudely. So yeah,
Yep.
I think that's been brilliance under your leadership and guidance, is to continue to evolve this, to figure out what's going to work. When I compare it back to my days in sales in the 90s in software sales, you've taken a very consultative approach because of what it requires here. And so that's something that's very different. That ties to, I'd like for you to explain, I think it ties brilliantly into why you called it My Sherpa. So will you explain that? What the name means?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as we were thinking about the challenges of commercial loans in particular, because they can get quite complex, the picture of Everest and the challenge it is to climb that. And who do you use to help get you to the summit? Not many people climb without a Sherpa to support them. So that was a natural kind of image that we wanted to capture.
That
And
came early on to you think? Yeah.
it did, and being more of that guide. So, guide is everything that we do. We're your trusted guide. We have summit guides that, is our sales team, and it's really helping guide people. And that's what Sherpas do. Like they're better climbers typically than you. They know the mountain better than you, and they carry usually a bigger load than you. But you celebrate the success when you get to the summit.
Right.
And I think that's a critical part for us, where we want our clients to celebrate that success and be able to celebrate that success with their customers, who ultimately are the ones who get the funding, for their business. where the
Yeah,
venture.
and just to continue with that analogy, and of course, what we do well in sales, especially in a consultative sales process, is you're helping that client, that lender, arrive at how do they apply this technology to solve that problem that they have, right? And you're
100%.
guiding them through that process. That happens through the discovery and sales process, but then continues as you help them implement the solution.
Yeah, I think that's another unique thing about us. That guide doesn't end once they sign the contract. We continually are with them, on a monthly and quarterly basis, ensuring they're seeing value and ensuring that we're providing any best practices or modifications so they can achieve their objectives, which is typically growth and experience for the borrowers, positive experiences for the borrowers that they serve.
All right, excellent. So what's next? What's next for My Sherpas that you can share that's exciting? What's on the horizon over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so Henry, you're talking to me often, but we have some pretty large clients that are about to sign with us. One in particular is 21 billion in assets, which will be a great testament to the value of the tech.
Absolutely.
We have a very substantial roadmap of new features. We're going to start leveraging AI in the right way. We think as using that guide as our North Star. And we think that's going to further enhance not only our current clients, but those that we're speaking with, and really expect the business to take off. I think we've built up a lot of momentum and steam, and I think that's going to start to be realized in the next 12 to 24 months.
Exciting. Thanks for sharing. All right,
Yeah.
completely different question. I'm always looking for a book recommendation. Is there a book that comes to mind that you would recommend?
Yeah, a great book that we like to read here at My Sherpas is a book by Reed Hastings and Aaron Meyer called No Rules, Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. That's something that to us embodies a culture that we try to live, which is, I think they call it radical candor in the book, but it's understanding that the work and finding the right solution is really the point by which all feedback is given. And it's never a personal attack or anything like that. It's how do we make each other better? And nobody's immune to that, even me as the co-founder and CEO. And we found a lot of value in trying to live that style of culture here. And it's allowed us to be as adaptable and changeable as we have been to see the success we've seen to date.
It's certainly relatively easier to do in a smaller organization, as you still are, relatively speaking. But can you think of an example of where you have applied that culture or that way of doing things? Is there something that comes to mind that's an example of how you do that, how you execute on that philosophy?
Here in My Sherpas,
Yeah, in My Sherpas. Yeah, in My Sherpas. Yeah. How is there an example of how you've applied that, or how you make that possible at My Sherpas?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything, a great example is going to happen today. We do a monthly company stand up. Every leader of the pillars that we follow, departments, if you will, shares what they've been working on, what challenges they're facing, what they expect to do next. And we go through that and just have an open conversation with everyone. It's an all company meeting, and everyone's free to comment, provide perspective. We show the profit and loss statement of the company in the meeting and just show people what's happening. And, that can be a little ugly in a startup.
Yeah, but it's a lot of transparency. Exactly. There's pros and cons to that, right?
And what I've found in doing that is that, rather than being the CEO or the board and stressing over these things, when you have all these people that want to help and want to see the company succeed, if you can share some of that emotion with them, some of the stress, and, maybe somebody leaves as a result of seeing a bad P&L, but maybe they're not the right person to be in your company anyways.
Right.
And I think when you share those things, now everybody sees the motivation of why we're doing things, why we're making decisions. It's not happening in this, secret cabal or something. And so I found that just gets the best out of the group. And so that's a great example that's happening today.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for the book recommendation. I'll have a link to that book, No Rules, Rules. I'll have a link to that on the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. All right, let's wrap it up, Josh. What's one, we talked about a lot of different things here, but I think if I summarize the primary focus areas, it's been the journey, transitioning, especially in your case, from being an engineer to starting your own businesses. So that transition, the entrepreneurial journey, and then of course, your experiences with a startup, especially a software startup. But what's one or two things that come to mind that you want us to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think for me, having an idea that you're excited about and maybe others are excited about definitely is key to starting a business. If you're thinking about leaving your corporate job, or you're a young person out of college thinking about starting something, you definitely need an idea that's exciting and will keep you motivated, because oftentimes that is your motivation for the next few years until you can realize the potential of that idea. So I think that's a key takeaway. And then also being willing to adapt your thinking, your mindset as you learn more about the industry or market or your customer that you're going to serve, and being able to try to find areas of adding real value that can, generate value for you and your business. I think those are very critical.
Yeah. Huge takeaways. That your first point about the why, my vision has to be strong enough. I always talk about that, because otherwise you will not get through the sleepless nights. You will not get through those stresses of how am I going to make payroll this week? You've got to have enough of a strong direction that you're going in to get you there, because you got to get through some hard times. Adaptability, we've talked about that already in this conversation. I think that's one of the things that makes you successful, is that lack of arrogance. Not that it means you're not confident in who you are and what you're capable of doing, but you're open to other ideas, as you just shared in your organization and from others, especially as you were developing the idea. You're always willing to listen and adapt. And so those, I think, are two huge key takeaways. Thanks for sharing that. Where do you want us to go online to learn more about MySherpas?
Yeah, you can go to MySherpas.ai. Also follow us on LinkedIn. And we also have a YouTube channel now, MySherpas.ai on YouTube. So
excellent.
Please go there if you're interested to learn more.
So it's MySherpas.ai, not .com. So it's .ai.
Yep.
And again, if you don't remember that, just go to the show notes page for this episode, and I'll have a link, of course, there to Josh's website. Josh, fantastic conversation. Thanks for indulging all of these questions. Thanks for I had a little technical issue at the beginning, and Josh was very patient with me on that, so I appreciate that. But thanks for being transparent and sharing a lot of really inspirational and actionable advice. Thanks for being with me today.
Yeah, absolutely, Henry. Appreciate you having me on the show.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today, again, is Josh Talbert. I release episodes every Monday morning. You can find them anywhere you listen to podcasts, including my YouTube channel, The How of Business YouTube channel, and my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.